The stars around New Horizon Colony burned with their usual cold light when the sensors first detected them. 30 ships, each one 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. Dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, the colony's defense coordinator stared at her screen, watching the red dots multiply, and felt her stomach drop. Captain Dae-ho Kim was eating breakfast in the mess hall of the UN's Defiance when the alarm sounded. He dropped his fork and ran. His crew was already moving by the time he reached the bridge, strapping into their stations with practiced efficiency. Dae-ho slid into his command chair and pulled up the tactical display. What he saw made him swear under his breath. The aliens had arranged themselves in a formation that spoke of overwhelming confidence. They weren't trying to hide. They weren't maneuvering for advantage. They were simply advancing toward New Horizon like a hammer coming down on an egg. Dae-ho counted the enemy vessels again, hoping he had miscounted. He hadn't. 30 against 1. The Defiance was the only military ship in the system. Below on New Horizon, 10,000 colonists were going about their morning routines. Miners heading to the asteroid facilities. Scientists in their labs. Children in schools. None of them knew that first contact with an alien species was happening right now, that it was going very badly. Dae-ho opened the colony-wide channel. His voice was calm, though his hands were shaking. This is Captain Kim of the UN's Defiance to all New Horizon personnel. We have detected 30 unknown vessels entering the system. They are not responding to our hails. Begin evacuation protocols immediately. This is not a drill. On the planet below, Dr. Jiwon Park looked up from her workstation. She had been analyzing mineral samples from the northern continent. Now her screen was flashing red. Evacuation protocols. She had practiced this scenario a dozen times, but never thought it would actually happen. She saved her data to the colony's main computer and ran toward the emergency bunker. The alien ships kept coming. Dae-ho tried every communication frequency humanity knew. He broadcast greetings in 12 languages. He sent mathematical sequences. He transmitted images of Earth and peaceful symbols. Nothing worked. The aliens ignored every attempt at communication. When the enemy fleet reached weapons range, they didn't hesitate. The lead ship fired. A beam of pure energy cut through space and struck the colony's main power station. The explosion lit up the planet's surface like a second sun. Dae-ho watched the tactical display as the power grid flickered and died. Across New Horizon's main settlement, that was when Dae-ho stopped trying to talk and started trying to survive. The Defiance was a destroyer, built for speed and hit-and-run tactics. Dae-ho couldn't win this fight, but maybe he could hurt them. Maybe he could buy time for the evacuation. He pushed the engines to maximum and dove toward the enemy formation, angling his approach so the aliens would have to turn away from the planet to face him, his weapons officer. A young lieutenant named Kwan looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, we're heading right at them," I know, Dae-ho said. "Charge all missile tubes. Target the 3 closest ships. When I give the order, fire everything at once, then burn hard to starboard." The aliens seemed surprised by the aggression. Their formation shifted, trying to bring more guns to bear on the small human ship racing toward them. Dae-ho waited until the range closed to the point where missing would be impossible. "Fire," he shouted. The Defiance shuddered as every missile launched simultaneously. 24 warheads screamed across the gap. The aliens tried to shoot them down, but they were too close, too fast. The missiles slammed into 3 alien cruisers one after another. The first ship's shields collapsed, and its hull ruptured. The second took damage, but kept fighting. The third exploded in a ball of plasma. Dae-ho didn't wait to see the results. Hard starboard. Full power. The Defiance twisted away, her engines screaming. Alien weapons fire chased after them, burning through the space where they had been seconds before. On the alien command ship, Commander Thelver watched the human vessel escape with a mixture of anger and surprise. They had destroyed 2 ships and damaged a third. Impossible. The humans were supposed to be primitives, barely capable of spaceflight. Yet they fought with a ferocity that made no tactical sense. That small ship should have retreated immediately. Instead, it had charged straight into his fleet. Thelver ordered his ships to split their attention. Half would continue bombarding the colony. The other half would hunt down that troublesome destroyer. Deho led the pursuing aliens on a chase through the asteroid belt. He used every trick he knew, hiding behind rocks, cutting his engines to drift silently, firing from unexpected angles. His crew worked like a machine, anticipating his orders before he gave them. They managed to destroy one more alien ship with a desperate ambush, but it wasn't enough. The Defiance took hit after hit. Her shields failed. Her hull began to breach. Deho knew they were finished. Down on New Horizon, Dr. Guan Park had reached the emergency communications center. While others evacuated, she had stayed behind with a single purpose. The aliens were using weapons and defenses humanity had never seen before. If she could gather data on their technology, maybe Earth would have a chance when the aliens inevitably came for the homeworld. She pointed every sensor at the enemy fleet. She recorded shield frequencies, weapon signatures, engine emissions, everything. The data streamed into her computer faster than she could process it. She didn't need to understand it now. She just needed to get it home. The colony's main transmitter had been destroyed, but Jiwan was a resourceful scientist. She rigged together a backup system using 3 satellite dishes and a mining laser's power core. It would burn out after one transmission, but one was all she needed. She compressed the data as much as possible and aimed her makeshift transmitter toward Earth. It would take years for the signal to arrive, but it would arrive. She pressed the button and watched the power core overload, sending humanity's first intelligence on hostile aliens across the stars. Above the planet, Deho made his final decision. The Defiance was dying, her systems failing one by one. But his crew had bought enough time. The last evacuation ships were lifting off, packed with refugees. He could see them on his sensors, running for the edge of the system. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods." "That's an order." His crew hesitated. Quan spoke up. "Sir, you're coming with us." "Somebody needs to cover your escape," Deho said quietly. "Now go." They went. Deho watched them leave, then turned the dying Defiance toward the alien fleet one last time. He fired his remaining missiles, not at the warships, but at their formation, forcing them to scatter. Then he pointed his ship at the planet and burned every last drop of fuel in his tanks, making the aliens think he was attempting a suicide run on their position. The aliens destroyed the Defiance 3 minutes later. But by then, the evacuation ships had escaped into faster-than-light travel, carrying survivors and Jiwan's precious data toward Earth. New Horizon burned. The aliens claimed their victory. But they had learned something that day, something that would haunt them in the months to come. Humans, when cornered, did not surrender. They fought. The news reached Earth 3 weeks later when the evacuation ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Mars. The messages they carried spread across human space within hours. New Horizon was gone. Humanity had made first contact with an alien civilization, and that civilization had opened fire without warning. Fleet Admiral Minho Choi was tending his garden when the call came. He had retired 2 years ago after serving 40 years in the United Nations Space Command. He had fought pirates, stopped the Mars Rebellion, and built humanity's first real deep space fleet. Now he grew tomatoes and tried to forget the weight of command. His phone rang. He recognized the number. Unscathed Command. For a moment, he considered not answering. But old habits died hard. He picked up. "Minho, we need you back," said Admiral Torres, his former second-in-command. "It's bad." 6 hours later, Minho stood in the UNSC war room deep beneath Geneva, staring at a holographic display of New Horizon's final hours. He watched Captain Deho's destroyer charge into the alien fleet. He watched the colony burn. He watched the evacuation ships barely escape. "How many did we lose?" Minho asked quietly. 7,000 colonists didn't make it to the evacuation ships, Torres said. Captain Kim and 60 crew members died covering the retreat. "We saved about 3,000 people." Minho studied the alien ships, their formation, their weapons. their tactics. Everything about them screamed superiority. They had attacked without negotiation because they didn't think humanity deserved negotiation. "What do we know about them?" he asked. A woman stepped forward. Lieutenant Yuna Han, intelligence specialist. She looked too young to be in this room, but her eyes were sharp. "We're calling them the Vareth Collective, sir. Based on intercepted communications, they control 12 star systems. They've been spacefaring for over 1,000 years. They see us as primitives encroaching on territory they consider theirs. Do they know where Earth is?" "Yes, sir. Captain Kim's ship transmitted its full computer core to the evacuation ships before he died, including all navigation data that aliens might have captured. They know exactly where we are." Minho felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "What else?" Yuna pulled up another display. "This is the good news, if you can call it that. Dr. Jiwon Park, one of the survivors, managed to record detailed sensor data on the Vareth ships before the colony fell. Their shields operate on rotating frequencies. Their weapons have a recycling time between shots. Their ships are powerful, but not invincible. And the bad news: I've been monitoring Vareth communications for the past week. They're gathering a fleet, sir. A big one. Based on the chatter, I estimate they're assembling between 400 and 500 warships."
Ow.
The room went silent. Torres spoke up. "Minho, we have 140 combat ships. Most of them are destroyers and frigates designed for system defense. We have maybe 20 vessels that could survive deep space combat against ships like these." Minho walked around the holographic display, studying it from every angle. The other officers watched him, waiting. He had a reputation for seeing solutions others missed. Right now, he needed that reputation to be deserved. "How long until the Vareth fleet arrives?" he asked, based on their faster-than-light speeds. "Approximately 6 months, Yuna said." 6 months. Minho did the math in his head. 6 months wasn't enough time to build new ships. It wasn't enough time to develop new weapons. It wasn't enough time to train fresh crews. 6 months was barely enough time to organize what they already had, unless they didn't wait. "Show me the Vareth systems," Minho said suddenly. Yuna pulled up a star map. 12 red dots marking Vareth-controlled space, scattered across a region about 50 light-years from Earth. Blue lines connected them. Showing trade routes and supply chains, Minna pointed to specific systems. "This one is a logistics hub. This one has their main shipyard. This one houses their communication relay network. Am I right?" Yuna checked her intelligence reports, eyes widening. "Yes, sir." "How did you know?" "Because that's how I would organize an empire," Minho said. "Everything the Vareth are doing assumes they have time. They're gathering their fleet slowly, bringing ships from multiple systems to one assembly point. They think we'll sit here and wait for them to come to us." Torres caught on. "You want to hit them first?" "I want to hit them everywhere at once," Minho said. "If we wait for them to come here, we fight on their terms with their numbers. But if we take the fight to them, scatter our forces across multiple targets, we force them to defend instead of attack. We disrupt their logistics. We destroy their shipyards so they can't build more vessels. We cut their communications so they can't coordinate." "That's insane," said Admiral Kowalski from Fleet Operations. "We'd be spreading our forces across dozens of light years. No support. No reinforcements. If any of our battle groups fail, they're on their own," yes, Minho said. "And that's exactly why the Vareth won't expect it. They've been spacefaring for 1,000 years. They have rules. They have protocols. They think warfare is about massing your strength and crushing your enemy through superior numbers. But we don't have superior numbers, so we changed the rules." The room erupted in argument. Half the admirals thought Minho's plan was genius. The other half thought it was suicide. Minho let them argue for 10 minutes, then raised his hand for silence. "Here's what the Vareth don't understand about us," he said quietly. "They've been in space for 1,000 years, but they've never faced an existential threat. They expand slowly, absorbing primitive species, always confident in their superiority. But we're not primitive. We're desperate. And desperate humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. He turned to Torres. "Call a session of the UNSC Council. We're going to need authorization for this." The council met that evening. Minho presented his plan to representatives from every human nation. He didn't sugarcoat the risks. Half their fleet might not come back. Earth would be vulnerable while their ships were deployed. If the plan failed, humanity would face the Veroth reinforcements with depleted forces. But if they did nothing, the Verith would arrive with overwhelming power, and humanity would die slowly instead of quickly. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would strike first. Over the next 3 months, Minho organized the largest military operation in human history. He divided the fleet into 6 battle groups, each assigned a different target. He couldn't give them detailed orders because they would be operating independently across vast distances. Instead, he chose his commanders carefully and gave them simple objectives. Destroy everything that helps the Verith make war. He gave the Vanguard position to Captain So-Min Lee, a 32-year-old tactical prodigy who had never lost a battle. Some admirals questioned putting someone so young in such a critical role. Minho ignored them. Age didn't matter. Ruthlessness did. He put Commander Hyunwoo Bae in charge of the stealth operations. Hyunwoo had spent 10 years in special operations, hitting pirate bases and smuggler rings. He knew how to strike from shadows. The most dangerous mission went to Captain Yoon Ji-nam and her carrier group. She would assault the main Veroth shipyard with less than a third of the forces normally needed for such an operation. But Yoonji had a reputation for making the impossible look easy. As the fleet prepared to deploy, Unahan brought Minho a final piece of intelligence. She had intercepted a Verith communication that mentioned Earth specifically. The aliens were calling humanity the Screamers because of how fiercely Daeho and his crew had fought at New Horizon. "They're afraid of us," Yuna said. "Just a little. They won't admit it, but they're afraid." Minho smiled. "Good. Fear makes people sloppy." On the day of departure, Minho stood on the bridge of the UN's Indomitable, his flagship. Around him, 140 human warships prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful. Minho thought about the 10,000 people who had died at New Horizon. He thought about Daeho Kim, who had sacrificed everything to save 3,000 strangers. He thought about Jiwon Park, who had stayed behind to gather intelligence while her world burned. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Choi. In a few moments, we're going to do something no human military force has ever done before. We're going to strike across the galaxy. We're going to hit an enemy that thinks we're primitive and weak. We're going to show them what humans do when you threaten our home." He paused, making sure every crew member on every ship heard his next words. "We don't have their numbers. We don't have their technology. But we have something they don't. We have a reason to win, and that makes all the difference. Today, we take the fight to them. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. The war had begun. Captain So-Min Lee's battle group dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Korvax system. 23 human ships against the largest Varath logistics hub in this sector. So-Min stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with cold calculation. "Sensor report," she ordered. Her operations officer, Lieutenant Taeyong, pulled up the data. 38 Verith vessels in system, ma'am. Most are cargo ships and transports, but I count 12 military escorts. The main supply depot is on the 4th planet, heavily shielded." So-Min nodded. This was exactly what intelligence had predicted. The Varath were gathering supplies here before shipping them to their main fleet assembly point. Destroy this depot and the enemy would have trouble feeding and arming their forces. "All ships spread formation Delta," So-Min commanded. "Yoonji taught me something before we left. Don't fight fair when you can fight smart." Her fleet split into 3 groups, approaching Korvax from different vectors. The Varath escorts moved to intercept, confident in their superiority. They had fought dozens of species over the centuries. They knew how battles worked. Fleets met in space. Shields and weapons decided the victor. But Salmon didn't fight like that. When the range closed, her ships fired something the Varith had never seen before. Electromagnetic pulse missiles, designed using the data Dr. Juan Park had gathered at New Horizon. The Varith shields operated on rotating frequencies, cycling through patterns to deflect different weapon types. But the EMP pulses didn't need to penetrate the shields. They just needed to disrupt them. The missiles detonated. Electromagnetic energy washed over the Varith escorts. For 6 seconds, their shields flickered and failed. 6 seconds was enough. Summoned ships poured railgun fire into the vulnerable vessels. 3 Varith escorts exploded before their shields came back online. The others scattered, confused, and damaged. "Don't give them time to recover," Solomon said calmly. "All ships, fire at will. Target their engines." The battle became chaos. The Varith tried to reform their defensive line, but summoned ships kept moving, never staying still long enough to be targeted effectively. She had studied every recording of Daeho Kim's final fight, learning from his aggressive tactics. In 30 minutes, Summon's group destroyed 9 of the 12 escorts. The other 3 retreated to the far side of the planet, calling frantically for reinforcements. "Ma'am, the supply depot is launching its own defense fighters," Tae-young reported. "Good," Soman said. "Means they're scared. Helm, take us into orbital range. Weapons. I want continuous fire on those depot shields. Don't stop until they break." The human fleet descended on the supply depot like predators. The Varith had built powerful shields around their facility, designed to withstand siege weapons. But Salmon didn't use siege weapons. She used the EMP missiles again, disrupting the shield generators, then hammered the weakened sections with everything she had. The depot shields collapsed. Salmon didn't hesitate. "Target the fuel storage tanks," she ordered. Her weapons officer looked uncertain. "Ma'am, if we hit those, the explosion will destroy the entire facility. There might be civilians down there." Salmon's face was stone. "The Varith didn't care about our civilians at New Horizon." "Fire." The railgun spoke. The fuel tanks ruptured. The explosion lit up the planet's atmosphere, a mushroom cloud visible from orbit. The supply depot and everything in a 50-kilometer radius ceased to exist. Salmon watched without expression. She felt nothing. Admiral Minho had chosen her for this role because she understood what war really meant. It meant doing terrible things so your people could survive. "All ships withdraw," she ordered. "We're done here." Across the galaxy, Commander Hyun-woo Bae was conducting a very different kind of operation. His 6 stealth frigates had infiltrated the Thandros system undetected, using special coatings that absorb sensor waves instead of reflecting them. The Varith had sophisticated scanning technology, but they had never needed to look for stealth ships before. Thandros Station hung in space, a massive communications relay that connected for Varith sectors. Hyun-woo studied it through his ship's view screen. Destroying it would be easy. Any ship with missiles could do that. But Minho's orders had been specific. Make it look like an accident. Status on the demo charges? Hyun-woo asked his demolitions expert. "Ready, sir?" "Shaped charges designed to destroy the station's fusion reactor containment. When it goes, it'll look like a reactor malfunction." "Perfect. Deploy the infiltration team." 6 soldiers in environmental suits left Hyun-woo's ship in a small shuttle, drifting toward Thandros Station on minimal power. The Varith sensors detected nothing. The shuttle attached to the station's hull at a maintenance airlock. The soldiers cut through the outer door, entered the station, and moved through the corridors like ghosts. The Varith crew noticed nothing until it was too late. The human soldiers placed their charges at critical points around the reactor chamber, set 30-minute timers, and withdrew. They were back in the shuttle and away from the station within 20 minutes. Hyun-woo watched his chronometer count down. When it hit 0, the charges detonated deep inside Thandros Station. The explosions ruptured the reactor containment. The fusion reaction went out of control. The station died in a ball of light that outshone the local sun for 10 seconds. Communications between 4 Varith sectors went dark, the enemy fleet still assembling in preparation for their assault on Earth. suddenly couldn't coordinate their movements. Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. "Take us to the next target." Captain Yoonji Nam had drawn the hardest assignment. Her 23 ships, including 2 precious carriers loaded with fighters, faced the Varith shipyard at Geltos. Intelligence reported 80 defending vessels and planetary defense batteries that could shred capital ships. EUNG stood in her carrier's flight operations center. Watching her pilots prepare for launch, they were young, most of them. They looked at her with trust, believing she would bring them home. She hated that look, because she knew most of them wouldn't survive the next few hours. Admiral Minho's orders were clear, she told her assembled officers. "We destroy that shipyard. We do it, even if it costs everything." Her second-in-command, Commander Jiho, frowned. "Ma'am, we're outnumbered 3-1. Even with surprise, the odds are terrible." "Yes," Yoonji said. "So we'll use the one advantage we have. The Varith think carriers are support ships. They don't understand what human pilots can do." She pulled up a tactical display. The shipyard's primary defense is its shields, powered by 6 orbital generators. Those generators are protected by the defense fleet. Standard tactics say we need to defeat the fleet first, then destroy the generators, then attack the shipyard. But that would take hours, and we don't have hours. She zoomed in on the shipyard itself. "So we're going to do something insane. We're going to fly our fighters straight through the enemy fleet, ignore the generators completely, and attack the shipyard's fusion reactors from inside the shield perimeter." Silence. Then Jiho spoke carefully. "Ma'am, fighters can't carry weapons powerful enough to destroy those reactors." No, Yoonji agreed. "But they can carry nuclear mines. Small ones, shielded to avoid detection. They fly in, attach the mines directly to the reactor housing, and get out before detonation." Her officers stared at her. What she was describing was a suicide mission. Fighters would have to penetrate enemy lines, survive defensive fire, approach a heavily defended structure, and escape before nuclear weapons detonated at close range. "It's impossible," someone whispered. "Probably," Yoonji said. "But we're doing it anyway," briefed the pilots. "Launch in 1 hour." The attack began with her capital ships drawing the Varith defenders away from the shipyard. Yoonji's cruisers and destroyers charged straight at the enemy fleet, weapons blazing. The Varith took the bait, focusing on the obvious threat while her carriers hung back, apparently staying safe. Then Yoonji launched her fighters. 200 small, fast ships burst from the carrier bays and burned toward the shipyard at maximum speed. The Varith defenses tried to stop them, but there were too many targets moving too fast. EUNG watched her tactical display as her pilots performed miracles. They dodged fire, wove through debris, and screamed toward the shipyard. Dozens died in the first minute, dozens more in the second. But enough survived to reach their target, the lead squadron. Flying ships with names like Thunder and Lightning painted on their hulls attached their nuclear mines to the reactor housings. Yoonji watched the mission clock count down. "All fighters break off," she commanded. "Get clear now." The pilots fled. Many didn't make it. The nuclear mines detonated in sequence, each explosion feeding into the next. The shipyard's fusion reactors went critical. The entire structure, along with 42 Varith ships caught too close, vanished in a white-hot blast that registered on sensors 50 light-years away. Yoonji stood motionless as her surviving fighters limped back to the carriers. She had launched 200 pilots. 97 returned. "Ma'am," Jiho said quietly, "the shipyard is destroyed." "Mission accomplished." Yoonji nodded but said nothing. Mission accomplished. More than half her pilots dead. She would see their faces for the rest of her life, but the shipyard was gone. The Varith couldn't build new ships there anymore. Across human-occupied space, 6 battle groups struck 6 different targets. They hit supply depots and communication relays and shipyards. They destroyed fuel reserves and ammunition stockpiles and repair facilities. They didn't fight for glory or territory. They fought to cripple the enemy's ability to make war. The Varith collective reeled. Their military leaders couldn't understand what was happening. How could such a primitive species coordinate attacks across multiple systems simultaneously? How could they strike with such precision? How could they be so ruthless? Admiral Minho Choi received reports from each battle group as they withdrew. Summon's mission, complete success, minimal losses. Hyenhwa's mission, complete success, no losses. Yoonji's mission, complete success, heavy casualties. Minho studied the casualty reports. 15 ships destroyed. 3,000 personnel dead. He felt the weight of each loss, but the strategic picture told a different story. The Vareth supply network was in chaos. Their communication system was crippled. Their shipbuilding capacity was reduced by 60%. The fleet they had been assembling to attack Earth was trapped in their home system, unable to coordinate reinforcements. Humanity had bought itself time. But Minho knew the real battle was still coming. The Vareth would reorganize. They would adapt. And then they would come for Earth with everything they had left. Minho began planning for the final confrontation. The Vareth High Council chamber fell silent as the reports came in. Archon Kelroth, leader of the collective, stared at the holographic displays showing the devastation. 7 logistics hubs destroyed. 3 communication relays offline. 2 shipyards reduced to debris. Scattered attacks across 12 systems, all happening within a 6-hour window. Impossible, muttered Council Member Therix. They're primitives. They barely have faster-than-light technology. Primitives don't coordinate multi-system strikes, Kelroth said coldly. Primitives don't infiltrate military installations. Primitives don't destroy shipyards defended by 80 vessels. Commander Thelver stood before the council, his uniform still scorched from the battle at Korvax. He had barely escaped Summon's assault, his ship limping away while the supply depot exploded behind him. The humans fight unlike any species we've encountered, Thelver reported. They don't follow standard engagement protocols. They strike at weak points, withdraw before we can respond, and show no concern for their own casualties. At Geltos, they flew fighters into a nuclear detonation just to destroy our shipyard. You're saying they're suicidal? Another council member asked. No, Thelver said carefully. They're committed. There's a difference. Suicidal species don't plan coordinated strikes across multiple systems. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. They targeted our logistics, our communications, our production capability. They're not trying to defeat us in battle. They're trying to starve our war machine. Kelrath absorbed this. The Varath had conquered 17 species over the past 3 centuries. Most surrendered after a single demonstration of Varath power. Those that resisted were crushed through overwhelming force. But none had fought like this. Recall all our scattered fleets, Kelroth ordered. Bring every ship back to Varath Prime. We defend our core systems. Archon, that would mean abandoning our outer territories, Therix protested. Our outer territories are already lost, Kelroth snapped. The humans have proven they can strike anywhere. We can't defend everything, so we defend what matters. Concentrate our forces. Force them to come to us. Thelver understood the strategy. Pull back to a defensible position, mask their overwhelming numbers, and crush the human fleet when it came. It was sound military doctrine, but something troubled him. The humans had shown they were willing to divide their forces to take risks that no sane commander would accept. What if they did the same thing again? What if they saw the concentrated Varath fleet and decided it was the perfect target? He kept his concerns to himself. The council had made their decision back on Earth. The returning human battle groups were met with celebration and grief in equal measure. Summoned ships arrived first, their crews exhausted but victorious. Hyenhwa's stealth frigates slipped in quietly, as was their nature. Yoonji's carriers came last, carrying the bodies of 103 pilots who would never see home again. Admiral Minho Choi stood in the hangar bay as Yoonji disembarked. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the past month. Her eyes were hollow. Mission accomplished, sir, she reported formally. I know, Minho said. You did what needed to be done. I sent children to die, Yoonji said quietly. You sent soldiers to war, Minho corrected. There's a difference. Those pilots knew the risks. They volunteered anyway. Youngji said nothing. Minho knew she would carry the weight of those deaths forever. Good commanders did. Get some rest, he told her. We're not finished yet. Lieutenant Yunahan found Minho in the command center 3 hours later. She looked excited and worried at the same time. Sir, we've intercepted New Varith communications. They're pulling back their entire fleet to Varith Prime. Minho studied the intelligence data. How many ships? Best estimate? 837 combat vessels. They're creating a defensive perimeter around their homeworld. Smart, Minho muttered. Force us to come to them. Fight on ground they choose. Sir, we can't assault that many ships. Even with our victories, we only have 107 vessels left. The odds are almost 8-1, Minho smiled. Actually, this is exactly what I wanted. Yuna blinked. Sir, think about it. Right now, the Varith fleet is scattered across multiple systems, still trying to organize. If they stay scattered, we could spend years hunting them down while they slowly rebuild. But if they concentrate everything in one place, we can end this war in a single battle. Okay, battle we'll lose, Yuna pointed out. Conventional tactics say yes, Minho agreed. So we won't use conventional tactics. Call a meeting of all senior officers. And find Dr. Jiwan Park. I need to talk to her about those EMP weapons. The meeting happened that evening in the UNSC war room. Every captain who had survived the raids was present. Salmon Lee stood straight despite her exhaustion. Hyunu Bei leaned against a wall, analyzing everything. Yoon Jinam sat silently, lost in thought. Minho waited until they were all assembled, then spoke. The Varath have given us an opportunity. They've concentrated their entire military at Varath Prime, 800+ ships defending their homeworld. They expect us to either give up or spend years preparing for an assault, shouldn't we? Admiral Torres asked. We're outnumbered 8-1. We're always going to be outnumbered, Minho said. The Varith have a larger population, more resources, and centuries of spacefaring experience. If we give them time, they'll rebuild everything we destroyed. They'll come at us again, stronger than before. We need to end this now. He pulled up a tactical display. I'm proposing Operation Scattered Stars. We take every ship we have and assault Varith Prime directly. The room erupted. Officers shouted objections. The plan was insane. It was suicide. It would leave Earth defenseless. Summon's voice cut through the chaos. I'm listening. Minho nodded to her. Captain Lee understands. We don't fight them like they expect. We don't form a battle line and trade shots. We fragment our fleet into dozens of independent strike groups. We hit them from every direction at once. We create so much chaos that their superior numbers become a disadvantage. They'll still destroy us, someone said. Maybe, Minho admitted. But not before we destroy most of them. And here's the key. We can replace our losses faster than they can. Earth shipyards are running at maximum capacity. The Varith shipyards are crippled. This is a war of attrition. Now, an attrition favors whoever can build ships faster. Dr. Juwon Park spoke up. She had been analyzing Varith technology constantly since New Horizon. I've been studying the sensor data from all our engagements. The Varith shields have a weakness. When hit with multiple EMP pulses in rapid succession, they don't just flicker, they collapse completely for 30 to 40 seconds. If we can coordinate our strikes, we can create windows of vulnerability. How many EMP missiles do we have? Minho asked. We've been manufacturing them continuously. Current stockpile is 2,300. Minho did the math. That's enough for each ship to carry multiple volleys. If we hit the Varith fleet with coordinated EMP strikes, drop their shields, and pour in conventional fire during the vulnerability windows, we can even the odds. Yunwoo raised a hand. What about their homeworld defenses? Planetary shields? Ground-based weapons? That's where you come in, Minho said. I need your stealth ships to infiltrate the Varith Prime system ahead of the main fleet. Find me a weakness in their planetary shields, something we can exploit. And if there is no weakness, then you make one. The debate continued for hours, but slowly, the senior officers came around. The plan was risky, but doing nothing was riskier. The Varith would not give humanity another chance like this. Finally, Admiral Torres called for a vote. The decision was unanimous. Operation Scattered Stars would proceed. Over the next 2 months, humanity prepared for its greatest gamble. Every ship was loaded with EMP missiles. Every crew trained for independent operations. Every pilot practiced the chaos tactics that had worked so well in the raids. Salman spent her time studying Varith fleet formations, looking for weaknesses. Haiyan-Wu's stealth ships made 3 secret runs into Varith space, mapping their defenses. Yeonji rebuilt her fighter squadrons, training new pilots to replace those she had lost. Minho coordinated everything from the Indomitable. But he knew once the battle began he would have limited control. Each captain would be on their own, making split-second decisions that could win or lose the war. The night before departure, Minho walked through the Indomitable's corridors. He passed young crew members who tried not to show their fear. He passed veterans who had seen combat and knew what was coming. He passed the memorial wall, where names of the dead from New Horizon and the raids were carved in stone. He stopped at Daeho Kim's name, the captain who had started this war by refusing to surrender, who had bought time for 3,000 people to escape, who had shown the Varuth that humans would fight to the last breath. "We're finishing what you started," Minho said quietly to the name on the wall. The next morning, 107 human warships gathered in Earth orbit. Below them, 7 billion people watched and prayed. Ahead of them, 837 Varath vessels waited at their homeworld. Now confident in their superiority, Minho stood on his bridge looking at his fleet. So small compared to the enemy, so fragile, but crewed by people who refused to give up. "All ships," he said, "jump to faster than light speed. Target, Varith Prime." The fleet vanished into the stars. Behind them, Earth waited in silence. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Varith Prime system. 107 ships against 837. On every bridge, sensors lit up with red markers showing enemy vessels. So many red markers that they covered the tactical displays like a rash. Admiral Minho Choi stood on the bridge of the UN's Indomitable and felt a moment of doubt. Had he led humanity's entire military to its death? Then he pushed the doubt away. Too late for second thoughts now. "All ships, this is Admiral Choi," he broadcast. "Execute Operation Scattered Stars, fragment formation, independent attack vectors. Captains, you know your objectives. Fight smart, fight hard. Make them remember us." The human fleet split apart like a dandelion scattering in the wind. Individual ships and small groups peeled away in every direction, each following their own attack plan. It looked like chaos. It was chaos. It was controlled chaos. That made all the difference. Commander Thelver watched from the Varith command ship as the humans approached, expected them to form a battle line to mass their forces for a concentrated assault. Instead, they scattered. What are they doing? Archon Kelroth demanded from the throne room on Varith Prime. "I don't know," Thelver admitted. "They're breaking formation, heading in dozens of different directions. Then destroy them piecemeal. This is a gift. They've divided their strength." But Thelver understood. The humans weren't dividing their strength. They were multiplying their threat vectors. His fleet would have to split its attention across the entire battle space. Superior numbers meant nothing if you couldn't bring them to bear on a single target. "All ships, engage at will," he ordered. There was nothing else to do. Captain Salman Lee led the spearhead assault with 12 ships. She aimed straight for Thelver's command vessel, ignoring every other target. Her ships screamed through space at maximum speed, dodging enemy fire through aggressive maneuvering. EMP missiles, first volley, fire. She commanded her ships launch 24 electromagnetic pulse weapons. The missiles raced toward the Varoth command ship and detonated in a cascade of energy. The ship's shields flickered and died. Now, pour everything into that ship. Railgun rounds and missiles hammered into the Varith flagship. Its armor held, but the ship took heavy damage. Salman didn't wait to finish it off. Her group was already burning toward the next target. Leaving the flagship disabled and burning, Thelver felt his ship shudder under the assault. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. They had underestimated the humans again. Those EMP weapons were devastatingly effective. "Get our shields back online," he shouted, and somebody killed that ship. But Salman's group was already gone. Diving into the Varith formation like wolves among sheep. Across the battle space, similar scenes played out. Small human groups struck at different targets, used their EMP weapons to drop shields, then hammered the vulnerable ships with conventional weapons before withdrawing. The Vareth fleet tried to respond, but they were fighting dozens of small battles instead of one large one. Commander, Hyunwoo Bay's stealth frigates appeared without warning in the midst of the Vareth formation. They had infiltrated the system days ago, hiding in the asteroid belt, waiting for this moment. Now they struck at the Vareth command and control vessels, the ships that coordinated the fleet's movements. Target the communication arrays, Hyunwoo ordered. Make them blind and deaf. His ships fired missiles at close range, destroying the sensor and communication equipment on 6 Varoth coordination vessels. Suddenly, large portions of the Vareth fleet couldn't talk to each other. Ships collided trying to maneuver. Firing solutions became confused. Order collapsed into chaos. Captain Yoonji Nam led her carrier group from a different angle. She had rebuilt her fighter squadrons with young pilots hungry to prove themselves. Now she unleashed them against the Vareth defensive screen. All fighters, weapons free, she commanded. Hit them fast and get out. 400 fighters swarmed into the Vareth formation. They were tiny compared to the capital ships, barely worth targeting. But each one carried missiles and railguns. They darted between the massive Vareth vessels, firing at shield generators, engine mounts, weapon batteries. They were like bees stinging a bear, each sting barely noticeable, but hundreds together becoming unbearable. The Vareth fleet tried to swat them down, but the fighters were too fast, too numerous. And while the aliens focused on the fighters, Yoonji's capital ships slipped in behind them and opened fire on their undefended rear quarters. Dr. Juwon Park worked frantically in the Indomitable's tactical center, analyzing the battle in real time. She had predicted the EMP weapons would be effective, but she hadn't expected them to be this effective. The Vareth shields were failing faster than projected. Admiral, I'm seeing a pattern in their shield failures, she reported to Minho. When we hit them with coordinated EMP strikes, the shields don't just drop. They overload and damage the shield generators. Ships we've hit are taking longer and longer to bring their shields back online. Minho smiled grimly. Then we keep hitting them. All ships prioritize targets we've already engaged. Don't let them recover. The battle raged for 2 hours. Human ships darted in and out of the Vareth formation like sharks. They didn't stand and fight. They struck and withdrew, never giving the enemy a chance to pin them down. It was exhausting, demanding perfect coordination and split-second timing. But it worked. Slowly, impossibly, the kill ratio began to even out. Yes, human ships were dying. Somin watched 3 vessels in her group get destroyed. Hyunwoo lost 2 of his precious stealth frigates. Yoonji's fighters died by the dozens. But the Vareth were dying too, faster than they could adapt. Then disaster struck. Somin's ship, Yun's Thunder, took a direct hit from a Vareth heavy cruiser. The shot punched through her weakened shields and ruptured her reactor containment. Warning klaxons screamed across her bridge. Reactor breach, her engineer shouted. We have maybe 3 minutes before total failure. Salman looked at her tactical display. They were in the middle of the Vareth formation. If her ship exploded here, it would just be another casualty. But if she could reach that Vareth supercarrier 2 kilometers away, her dying ship could take it with her. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. Engineering, give me everything you have left in the engines. Helm, set course for that carrier. Crew hesitated. Captain, you need to evacuate too. I need to make sure we hit our target, Salman said calmly. Now go. That's an order. Her crew fled to the escape pods. Salman sat alone on her bridge as the Thunder accelerated toward the enemy carrier. The Vareth tried to shoot her down, but her ship was already dying. Their shots didn't matter anymore. Salman thought about her parents. Back on Earth, she thought about the 3,000 people saved at New Horizon. She thought about every person depending on humanity to win this battle. Then she stopped thinking and just flew. The Thunder rammed into the Vareth carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a fireball that registered on sensors across the system. Sommely died instantly, taking 800 Vareth crew members with her. Mina watched it happen from the Indomitable. He closed his eyes briefly, honoring her sacrifice, then opened them and continued commanding the battle. There would be time to grieve later. If they survived, the battle entered its 4th hour. Both fleets were battered and bleeding. Human losses stood at 41 ships destroyed. Vareth losses exceeded 600. The mathematics of attrition were working in humanity's favor, but barely. Then Dr. Giwan made her breakthrough. "Admiral, I found it!" she shouted. "The planetary shields around Vareth Prime have a resonance frequency. If we hit it with a coordinated EMP strike at just the right frequency, we can collapse a section of the shield grid." "How big a section?" Minho asked. "Big enough," Giwan said. Minho understood immediately. They didn't need to destroy Varoth's Prime. They just needed to threaten it. Force the Varoth to choose between continuing the battle and defending their homeworld. "All ships converge on my position," Minho ordered. "Prepare for final assault." Now the surviving human vessels, battered and scarred, regrouped around the Indomitable. 66 ships, left out of the 107 they had started with, but they had destroyed more than 600 Vareth vessels. The enemy fleet was in ruins. Thelver saw the humans gathering and understood what they planned. He opened a channel to Archon Kelrath. "They're going to attack the planet. I need permission to pull back the fleet to defend." "No," Kelrath interrupted. "Destroy the human fleet first. We can repair planetary shields." "With respect, Archon, we've lost 70% of our forces. The humans are willing to die to complete their mission. If we don't defend the planet, they will fire on it, and let them fire. We can rebuild cities. We cannot show weakness by surrendering." Thelver closed the channel and stared at the tactical display. Kelrath was a fool. The humans had already proven they would sacrifice everything to win. They weren't bluffing about attacking the planet. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All remaining ships, fall back to planetary defense position," he ordered, directly countermanding the Archon. "Protect Vareth Prime." As a Vareth fleet, what remained of it, withdrew to form a defensive line around their homeworld. It was the smart tactical move, but it also meant admitting the humans had won the battle. Minho watched the Vareth pull back and knew he had them. "Dr. Park, execute your resonance cascade. Open that shield." Guan worked at her console, fingers flying. She sent the precise EMP frequency to every ship in the fleet. On her signal, they all fired simultaneously at the same section of planetary shield. The combined electromagnetic pulse created a resonance wave that cascaded through the shield grid. A section 30 kilometers wide flickered and died. Vareth Prime lay vulnerable. Minho opened a direct channel to the Vareth homeworld. His voice was broadcast across every frequency, heard by every Vareth in the system. "This is Admiral Minho Choi of the United Nations Space Command, to the Vareth Collective. You attacked humanity without provocation. You killed our people without mercy. Now your fleet is broken, and your homeworld is exposed. I can give the order to fire on your planet. Millions will die. Or you can surrender and end this war." On Vareth Prime, Archon Kelrath stared at the communication with rage and disbelief. The humans had beaten them. Impossible, unthinkable, and yet true. Thelver's voice came over a private channel. "Archon, we've lost. If we continue fighting, they will bombard the planet. I've seen what humans do when they're committed. They will not stop." Kelrath wanted to refuse, wanted to order his remaining ships to fight to the death, but he looked at the tactical displays showing the destroyed fleet, looked at the vulnerable section of planetary shield, looked at the human ships ready to fire. For the first time in Varoth history, he spoke words that had never been spoken before. "We surrender." The war ended. In the weeks that followed, humanity and the Vareth negotiated the Treaty of Earth. The Vareth ceded their border territories, agreed to technology exchange, and accepted terms that ensured they would never threaten humanity again. Minho stood in the UNSC Memorial Garden, Looking at the new names carved in stone, 41 ships, 23,000 people. Captain Sominlee's name was there, along with Daeho Kim's and all the others who had died so humanity could survive. Lieutenant Yunahan found him there. She had been promoted to commander and now led humanity's intelligence services. The Vareth are asking to send observers to our military academies, she reported. They want to study our tactics, let them, Minho said. Maybe they'll learn that superior numbers don't guarantee victory. Maybe they'll learn that desperate people are the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. He touched Summon's name on the wall, then Daeho's. They bought us our future. The least we can do is make sure we deserve it. 6 months later, Minho retired for the final time. He went back to his garden, growing tomatoes and trying to forget the faces of the dead. But he couldn't forget. Didn't want to forget. They deserved to be remembered. Above Earth, the fleet patrolled in strength. New ships rolled out of the shipyards every week. Humanity had learned the lesson that Varuth taught them. Peace was maintained by strength. And strength came from being willing to fight for what mattered. Somewhere in the galaxy, other civilizations heard the story of how humanity struck across the stars and defeated an empire 1,000 years old. They heard about Captain Daeho Kim, who charged 30 ships with one. About Captain Somin Lee, who rammed her dying ship into an enemy carrier. About Admiral Minho Choi, who bet everything on a single desperate gamble and won. They heard, and they learned. Humanity was small. Humanity was young. But humanity was dangerous, and the galaxy would never forget.